Welcome to the What to Do webinar here at Oct. I'm down at Oct HQ here in Weybridge. That a little bit later when we chat you through. Just checking with my colleague in a couple of seconds that you guys can all cast. We have had issues, so all you're getting is sound. That would be good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off my head. Makes any difference to us or us all. It mean that we need to work on some stuff as well. With use them worded. Cool. Hopefully that should be a little bit better. So let's just wait a couple of seconds and see if Eliott can hear that. Well done. So we're all good. Fantastic. So thank you for joining. As always, my role here is to make sure that you're getting the most out of your car. I look after all things EV community, and that helps us understand just what's going on and how we're getting sorted there. Thank you for all the questions that you have popped in over the past few days. We'd love to try and get through as many of them as possible. What we've done is we've sort of segmented them out into a few separate sort of sections for you to learn a little bit more. If your question isn't covered today, please do drop me an email. However, as I said, you're going to learn a little bit more about Weybridge because we're going to do something here in the future as well, which is really exciting. So I'll chat you through that as we get into the servicing, maintenance, and other bits and bobs as well. So as I said, today is all about what to do if, and that's we've had a lot of questions around tires, around servicing, around I need a new lease, or I'm thinking about a renewal, or do you know what, I'm not really understanding what's going on in my payslip. And for that, I'm not really the best person to talk through that. So what I've done is I've brought in my colleague Eliott. We're going to say hello to him right now, and he's going to tell you a little bit about what he does. And then a little bit later on, we're going to bring Eliott back in to discuss, in particular, payslips, how it looks on your, how it should look on your payslip, where to check for money, who to go and speak to if you think it might be wrong, and we're all good. So what I'm going to do is just introduce Eliott. Hey, Eliott, how you doing?
Hey, Charlie. Yeah, I'm all good. Thank you very much. Very excited to be here and really happy to be answering as much of the questions that we have coming through as I can.
Amazing. Do you want to tell everybody what obviously it says on the screen here, account executive, but what's your role really?
Yeah, very happy to explain that a little bit. So my role is to be an account manager. So my main duty is to make sure that everything with the scheme for your businesses and companies is running as smoothly as possible. So by default, that means I'm here as well to support anyone who jumps onto the scheme, gets a vehicle with us, and to make it the best possible experience that we can, essentially. And yeah, I think that's probably the best way to sum up my my role.
Amazing. And a lot of time you spend your day-to-day working with businesses in depth, right, to make sure everything's okay. So Eliott knows much more about this world of billing and invoicing and all that jazz, which really shouldn't really touch our drivers too much. But obviously it can get a little bit confusing because the way that you get your car is very different to how you would get your car elsewhere. So as I said, we've really sort of drilled down into three main sort of ways of looking at this. Servicing and repairs, that also covers consumables, which we'll come into and talk you through. We'll talk to you a little bit about tires. We're then going to go into like payslips, tax, and more. That's really where Eliott is going to come into his own. And then we're going to talk a little bit about renewals, because that's something that maybe hasn't been like really top of our mind for the past wee while, because we've not been around for long enough to have customers that need a second car, but we're getting there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some future plans, which is where we're going to talk about Weybridge and talk about some other stuff going on in that space as well. Before we get in there, I'm just going to double check that our sound is all okay and everybody is going on and can see what's going on. From some of the things here, I can see that we're all in good nick and we're all okay there, which is good. So if there are anything, I will sporadically jump back into YouTube to double check any questions, only because there's a slight delay between me talking and it being on your screen as well. So first up, we're going to discuss consumables. So we've had a lot of questions around how do I book servicing? How do I book repairs? How do I get my windscreen fixed? and all those kinds of things. I want to break servicing and maintenance down into two separate things, because actually those two separate things are quite important. So first up, we're going to talk about consumables. So for me, consumables are anything that your car wears through. So in a petrol or diesel car, you'll have known that as tires, oil, filters, brake pads, other filters, other forms of oil, and some other things as well. With an EV, a lot of that is got rid of, right? So you don't have to worry about burning oil. Brake pads are very rarely likely to go unless you're driving like Colin McRae or Lewis Hamilton, but some people do. And the big one really are going to be tires and window wipers. So with tires, there's been some questions around. I heard it's every 20,000 miles. I went to Quick Fit and found that they weren't going to swap my tires. What is it that's going on? So what we have is those two things are true. So first up, you get a new set of tires every 20,000 miles. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to wait for 20,000 miles for those tires to be approved. If you get punctures as well, they're approved too. The big thing is, though, Quick Fit are not going to swap a tire if it's above 2 mil. And a really easy and quick way of seeing whether or not your car is at 2 mil is with this graphic here. So this was taken on my car a while ago when I was getting my rear tires swapped after a journey to Sicily. And you can see there that across it, in the first picture on the left, there's a bar that goes across. That's your tire wear marker, and that should be there at 2 mil. So it should be there before the tire becomes illegal. The tire is illegal at 1.6. So as soon as it's there, you can take it and go and get it sorted. On the right-hand side, you'll see there's a picture there where the bar is still inset against the groove of the tires. That means that that tire isn't ready to be swapped yet. That's how we get through this and how we work that out. What will then happen is when you go into Quick Fit to get those tires sorted, what will happen is that they will look at that. If you're above 2 mil, they may not swap your tire. If you've got a slow puncture or you've got damage or some other stuff, they will write to us to ask us if we're okay to get it done. That's why it sometimes can take a little bit of time. If you're in this state above me here, you will be plain sailing and straight in. Now, the other question is, how do I book in to get tires? And we'll come to that in a couple of slides' time. The next thing that we really need to talk about are sort of servicing, maintenance, and repair. So what does this all look like? And we had some questions around, who do I phone? What do I do? How do I get in touch with them? And I'm going to go through that really nice and quickly. For us, servicing, maintenance, and repairs, that's anything. So breakdown, that's windscreens, that's window wipers, and then all the things that sort of happen with warranty. What we ask is that unless you've got a Tesla, for absolutely everything you do with us, you phone what we term the driver line, which is this number here on a card that should have been given to you in your car. If you don't have this car, drop me a wee email in the email that's in the chat panel. I'll try and get that sorted for you. I'll get you in touch with the right people and get that sorted for you. This is the same place you go to get all your tires done as well. So you phone that number across the bottom there as well. We've also had a little bit of confusion from customers, and I want to point out here that when I say that, I don't mean that all you guys are idiots. What I mean is that we realize that we want to let you know that there can be a little bit of confusion. And that if you phone that number and you need tires, you are going to go through to Quick Fit, but that's a tire booking line. So that's essentially if you know your tire is nearly at 2 mil, or it is at 2 mil, or you've got a slow puncture where you can wait a few days to book in to get that tire. If you are stranded at the side of the road and have a puncture, that line is not going to be 24 hours. The recovery line is going to be 24 hours, and we will absolutely come and collect you and get you home on a puncture if we can't repair it on that line as well. But that one is 24 hours. So if you pop your tire at the side of the road, I did it in a Tesla Model 3 a while ago. I ran over some tires, a nail on the road. You phone the driver line when you're at the side of the road and go through to recovery rather than through to tyres. Just to make sure that you guys don't sit on the phone waiting and waiting and waiting if you're stranded at 11:30 at night and it's the wrong line to go through. And we might try and change that in the future, but it's just in case it happens tonight, you know what you're doing. This is the same place you go to get all of your windscreens sorted, all of your services booked. And we've had some questions about, oh, I don't know when to book my service. When's my service due? In some cars, Tesla being the main one, there is no servicing requirement to not invalidate the warranty. So you don't have to get it serviced. My car is a BMW i4. It takes a little bit longer than your standard i4. It also doesn't have a running in service. So if you've had a performance car before, maybe you've got a Porsche Taycan and you're wondering, oh, my GT2 RS, if you've got one of those and you're on this call, please give me a phone. I would love to have a shot. But if you've got a GT2 RS, you sometimes get like a big running in service. So like 1,000 miles in. With electric vehicles, because there's less wear and tear, you don't need any of that. Just wait for the car to come up and tell you that you need a service and then phone the driver line. This is really important. One thing that we do need to make you aware of is sometimes we can't connect through your car's app to make sure that you're going to the right place to get servicing. So please, when it comes up with a service, don't book it in the car app, phone the driver line. We can get it all booked for you there. The only exception to that rule, again, is Tesla. The reason the exception to that rule is Tesla is because Tesla own and operate all of their own service centers. They're not dealerships with different agreements here and there and whatnot. So Tesla can see that we own the car almost instantly and deal with everything else for you. Hopefully, that brings us up to speed with everything that we had in terms of servicing and maintenance. If there's another question in there, please pop it in for me. Window wipers are covered, but again, that's done through QuickFit, and again, it's done on a time basis. So it depends on how long you've had the window wipers on, or if there's damage or other things like that. When it comes to this, the other thing that's really important to remember is if you have any damage to your car at all, please phone that driver line. It will pop you through to the people that can deal with repairs and insurance, and we can get you all sorted from there. If we don't know about it, it's a real struggle to do anything, especially coming into that sort of conversation. I'm going to tie this up nice and neatly and skip over Eliott. But coming into that renewals phase, we really need to know about that at the time that it's happened so we can make sure it's not going to sting you in the future. Obviously, you're covered and we want to make sure everything's sorted for you. Please let us know about them all. Phone up the driver line and we're all good. Eliott, hopefully, I'm going to drop in and check that we don't have any other questions coming through about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let Eliott talk to you a little bit about what he does. I'm going to pop myself on mute so that you don't get any feedback. And Eliott's going to talk you through a little bit about what he does, a little bit about tax, a little bit about salary sacrifice. So if you're on this call and you've got a salary sacrifice car, Eliott's going to explain all those questions around, is it a company car? Is it a personal car? Why is it a company car? Why do I have a weird thing going on in my tax code? Eliott's your guy for that. I'm going to be back in 2 ticks.
Okay, I guess it's my time to shine now. So essentially, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, is that I am an account manager. So I look at a lot of the ins and outs of things from a business perspective, but that does give me a really great insight into how this does affect you on more of a personal situation with obviously having a vehicle through the salary sacrifice scheme. And so what I would love to talk about really and make sure that everyone feels comfortable, and obviously if there's any further questions, I'm sure that we'll be able to answer them at the end, but obviously how the salary sacrifice works and running through a little bit of other key details such as benefit in kind tax, what that is, why is that something that's added onto there. And I'm also going to be talking and looking through one of the invoices and pretty much showing you exactly how it could look like on your payslip and obviously any of those sorts of things. So first off, wanting to sort of talk a little bit more about salary sacrifice. What is it? Why is it used? And essentially all the other details. Now, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people on this call who have an electric vehicle through us, but there may also be some people who do not have an electric vehicle through us and are thinking about it and want to get a little bit more information regarding this. So the first way to look at this is sort of a comparative as to what we saw previously with things that were looked at as business vehicles or sort of allowances that were given people to be able to have a vehicle. And so the way in which it's been previously is that a lot of people had a personal incentive. So a company car allowance that was given to people. Now, what we've seen over the past 5 years is that on average, this has actually dropped in terms of how much of a value you get from it. And what we have seen with the business side of things is that that has remained the same. So what salary sacrifice does is there is a personal benefit which utilizes the business incentive. So that is therefore why the car is viewed as a business vehicle and not a personal one. And this is why the amount of reclaimable miles for business expenses in terms of things like that is sitting at 9p, why there is benefit in kind tax, but also the really great benefit of why there is a tax saving for you. So I want to very quickly talk about what benefit in kind tax is. And benefit in kind tax is what the employee receives due to it being a company benefit. And it is based, when you're looking at sort of things like cars, it is based on CO2 emissions and obviously what the vehicle produces for that CO2 emissions. Now, electric cars are sitting at currently 2% until 2025, where it will rise to 3%, and then 2026, 4%, and sort of so on up until 2028 that we know of at the current moment. Now, what a lot of people may also be thinking and sort of being a bit worried about is when will this stop being a benefit for me? And when will it actually start causing me a little bit of sort of issues where it comes to the cost? And actually, is this a benefit for me anymore? So it is worth noting that salary sacrifice for electric vehicles will only start to not be a benefit when the benefit in kind tax reaches around 21.5%. So we are a very, very long way off. And considering that this is sort of the route that we're going in terms of how much of an increment it's rising by, we've got a very much a long time for this to still be a really fantastic benefit for people as well. So I want to very quickly talk about the tax savings and sort of why there may be sort of a difference for what some people are seeing, and sort of there maybe being a bit of a fluctuation in their pay slips. And then after that, we'll sort of move on to pay slips and sort of having a breakdown of that one. So with regards to the tax savings, so there can always be a difference on that one because the estimates that we give you and the quotes that we finalize you with are essentially based off the information that is given for the salary. Now, if there is a increase in that salary for the people who have end of year bonuses, quarterly commissions, maybe monthly commissions, that is always going to affect it in some way. But the benefit for you is that if that is the case, there is going to be much more of a saving for you if the salary increases during a specific time, in which in some months you will see a deduction in your salary sacrifice, but also you may see an increase in that. It is also worth noting that throughout the entirety of a fiscal year, it will always be a benefit and it'll always cost and equal itself out. So
can I, Eliott, just jumping in there? So what you're saying is that a lot of the time our quotes or our amounts are like an average across the year or an average that you would pay across the year.
Yeah.
So what you'll sometimes find is that in some months they'll maybe be a little bit higher or a little bit lower, but the amount that we've quoted you out with some other little bits going on, you might find other tax savings, like if you've got a cycle to work bike as well and some other stuff that can affect it, right?
Yeah.
If that's moving, then at the end of the year, it should all work out at the same amount, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We would not be doing something that is not going to be of a benefit and would not make sense and sort of fluctuate in such a way that it doesn't equal out as being exactly where it should be. So yeah, completely that is the case. And I think now would be a really great time to have a look at a invoice. A payslip, I should probably say. Invoicing is what I do on a daily basis, so apologies for getting a little bit confused on that one. But yeah, so how a salary sacrifice will look with regards to your payslip. So the first thing to sort of really notice and the sort of things that are going to be changing is your tax code. Now, because of this, and because you're going on to the salary sacrifice, and because it is overall for you personally a tax saving, there is going to be a few differences to note on this. The first one to note will be the tax code. Now that's going to be a different number, and it's just so that obviously HMRC are noticing that and obviously understand that there is a salary sacrifice being at work at the moment. Now, this is not something that you need to worry about. This is actually something from the business perspective that they all do, and which I'm there to support if there's any issues or problems. So this actually is only something to make you aware in terms of any of the differences that are going to be. Now, what is also worth noting as well for this is that there are going to be an additional section on your payslip, and different businesses are going to title this as something different. Some people just refer to it as salary sacrifice, company vehicle, company car, electric vehicle. There's a huge different range of things that are going to be there. Now, this will always show what the gross figure is under your entire monthly salary, the gross salary that you will be having. And it will show you what is being taken off. And obviously, then it will sort of give you a further breakdown into obviously what the net payment will be coming out of your payslip and what that actually does to your salary. So a perfect sort of thing right there is that it is obviously on the slide just there, is that it is showing obviously what your salary is going to look like at the end. So for example, the reference salary, what your sort of take home is before tax comes involved, and obviously what that's looking like. And then the sacrifice is actually what the gross amount is, which is the larger figure that you may see when you're getting a quote from us on what your vehicle is going to cost you and all of those details. Underneath it, it will then talk about the revised salary. So what that looks like with obviously that extra part taken off it. And then at the bottom, it will come to then what the actual taxable amount for you will be. And then obviously it will then go through the bits that needs to be taxed. It'll show your net pay. And then underneath it, it will show exactly what's coming off and sort of all those details further. If there is something that is a little bit off and there is something that you want to query further, that's something to reference with your scheme lead, who's the person who has the direct contact with the account managers of the scheme for the business. And essentially, if it's brought to us, what we'll do is that we'll look into it, we'll investigate it as a whole team, and then we'll get all that information back. And if there is something, then we'll make sure that we work to get it rectified as soon as possible. It's also worth noting that obviously you'll see some other factors on your payslip if there's anything else that you're doing through salary sacrifice, if there's a pension scheme, any of those other details that are in there, cycle to work. There's other factors that will obviously look onto your payslip and will obviously overall affecting sort of what I referenced earlier, what your take-home pay will be. We can only ever give you what those estimates are based off the figures that are given to us. But if you do, as I've said, want to query any of it further, please do not hesitate at all to reach out to the person who's in charge of the scheme at your business. They'll reach out to us in the account management team and we'll make sure to get it sorted. So yeah.
Awesome, Eliott. Thank you so much. So just to surmise there, right, and maybe summarize and to sort of have a quick chat with you, the thing for me that I think really stands out is that there can be some fluctuations, 10, 15 quid here or there, maybe a little bit more month on month. Don't panic too much if that's happening.
Yeah.
If you see big amounts, that's when maybe to get in touch with like your scheme lead. They can have a double check that they've got everything right. And 9 times out of 10, we actually manage all of that for them. So they'll get in touch with us and we can then look after them in terms of making sure that that's all present and correct. And even if it comes down to the, again, we can have a look at things like your payslip and other stuff going on, but I don't want to get into the weeds of that here because that's personal info and some other stuff's going on and some other stuff like that. Would that be fair? But as we said, and when we come on to future plans as well around servicing, maintenance and some other stuff and in life, we're going to talk about the fact that we don't always get things right first time. The big thing about us at Octopus is that we try to rectify as fast as possible. And also when there is something not right, we take it on the chin, we own it, and we'll move forward. So if there is something not right, please don't be quiet. Let us know. We can absolutely see how we can make a change. And also that's why we run these webinars and open up these questions, because actually, I don't know if 2 years ago we understood how many people actually had questions about this kind of thing. And now we know that these people are asking questions, which is great because it means we can come in, try and solve the issue. And if we solve it this way, fantastic. If we find other ways of solving it, then we can absolutely do that. And it's only with your feedback that we really understand that. Now, we're kind of coming into the next part of our 3-pronged attack. That's not the right way of saying it. Our trifecta of questions. I can see there are lots of questions coming in on the YouTube live stream, which will come towards at the end. They will be a bit higgledy-piggledy. I'll have a look through and ask Eliott some of them, and I'll answer some as well. One thing we do have a question about is renewals and leasing. Now, for a lot of people, this may or may not pertain to them. And for a lot of people as well, you might be wondering, well, actually, Charlie's right. It might not affect me now, but it took me nearly 2 years to get my car. So my BMW took me about 18 months to get a hold of. Now, that then means that if you're in year 1.5 and you're on a 3-year lease, you might be sat there going, oh, what's going on? How are we getting on? Do I need to start thinking about a car now? The short answer is no. The long answer is maybe. So the short answer is if you are in one of our best-selling cars, or if you fancy moving into what we believe is going to be really strong, we now do something called secured supply, which means we buy a whole load of cars ready so that if you phone us up and you go, oh no, I need a car in 3 months, we can get you a car in 3 months. If you like your car to be bright octopus pink with a Constantine on the side and to have the biggest, flashiest wheels with the different coloured seats and a specific spec, then yes, reach out to us a little bit earlier. We can help make sure that gets sorted. Big thing to point out, we will be in touch 6 months before your car is due to be returned, 3 months, and we're debating whether or not we put it at a year as well, just to make sure that you're all good there. There were also some questions around downing the number of miles that you had signed up for in your lease, or upping the number of miles that you had on your lease. If you want to down your miles, that's something we can't do. When we partner with funders, they don't really do that. What we can do, though, is we can look at, if you're significantly under, maybe extending your contract so that you actually hit the right number of miles as for what you've said. Let me give you an example of that. Let's say you told us that you're going to do 12,000 miles a year, but really you only do 8. There's a shortfall there of 4,000 miles, and that you're doing 4,000 miles less a year than you would normally. So I'm going to do this maths really quickly, but 8 times 3 is 24, whereas 8 times 12 is 32. 3 times 12 is 36, and 3 times 8 is 24. So what we might be able to do is add an extra year onto your term. So that then takes you to 32,000 miles, but you're nice and close in terms of the amount that's paid, and the amount of miles you've done is fairly similar. Hopefully that makes sense. Most people don't really go vastly underneath their mileage. There's also a type form, which I'll share at the end of this, which I can pop in to help you understand that a little bit more. Upping your miles is a little less complicated and a little bit more complicated in that upping your miles you can do, funders will let you do it, but it is also going to happen at the current rate of financing. So if you got your car pre a lot of the price lifts in early 2022, and also before the change in interest rates, you're going to find that that's going to be super duper expensive to add some mileage on. The reason being that we, as an entity, treat our mileages not per year, but over the entire term. So right now with my car, I'm a little bit over, but that's because I did 4,000 miles in 2 weeks driving to Sicily and back using the Electroverse. So I know I'm not going to do that every year. So this year, I might take my car to Scotland a wee bit, but it's not going to do those extra 4,000 miles that it did last. So that's where it starts to equal out. I don't need to keep my car at 12,000 every single year. So if that's the case, there are ways around. We can work with you. As I said, we're going to pop a type form into the chat panel in a second so that you can see all that, understand all that. But really, if you can get away with not upping your miles, I would try not to up your miles. If you want to down your miles, as I said, we can look at maybe extending you out a little bit and seeing what's going on there. we've had some questions when we sent out the form around things like pricing fluctuations and some other stuff. Again, hopefully Elliott's covered those off. If they're not covered in terms of the question being asked, please do ask it in the live stream. If it has been answered, but you're still a little bit worried, Eliott will be around for the next couple of minutes to answer some questions that come through the stream. But also, what we will do is Eliott and I will look back over my emails over the next couple of days and make sure that we're all good there. And if there are any personal questions that come out, we can go. I look over here because Eliott sat over here while we are talking to each other on our screens. We can get that sorted for you and really look into what's going on. Before we go into those questions, and Eliott can go in and have a quick look at those and see if there's any he wants to take on, and he can come back in a second, is future plans. So, as I said, we're in Weybridge. I've also said that we understand that maybe we've had more questions around in life. So tires, servicing, maintenance. How do I book this? How do I book that? How do I get this out of my car? How do I get that out of my car? And a lot of my stuff is to help do that from like a content perspective. So can I make a webinar to help you understand more? Can I make you some videos to help you understand a little bit more? If you are in here, there's a couple of questions around like, how do I make sure prices of charging for taking my Tesla to a non-Tesla charger or a non-supercharger? How do I plan a trip at non-Tesla chargers? There's an Octoverse webinar for you. So there's another webinar all on using the Octoverse, the Electroverse to get where you need to go. And you can see that on our YouTube channel. I'll maybe see if I can click a link into the chat panel. I'll need to double check with Eliott what I've promised I'm going to put in the chat panel to make sure I don't forget anything. But really, that's what I can do. And what I want to do is get you folks, so get our drivers sat down with the team that are semi-brand new. Sinead's been in for a couple of months now, who are now looking after you in terms of processes, where you book stuff, how you book stuff, and what we've got moving forward in terms of if I'm in an accident, what do I do? What we're going to do is in the next couple of months, keep a wee eye out on your inbox. We're going to invite some people to Weybridge. So if you're local to Surrey, London, Watford, Kent, that kind of place, and you want to make the trip down, absolutely. We'll put on a semi-spread. We've got sofas. We've got a ping pong table, that kind of thing. You can come down, hang out with us, and ask questions of the real people in the room. And we'll also publish that on our YouTube, a bit like this, so that we can ask questions of those people. It's brilliant to get the questions in and then for me to go and find the answers and get them answered to you. But also, it's going to be amazing to ask those people in person and see what we've got coming. The other thing is that I don't really understand how some of these really cool pieces of tech work that allow you to book stuff and check where your car is and do all that jazz. I just like driving cars, and if I can drive cars in circles and quickly and they're electric, even better. But those guys can absolutely help you get the most out of that. And it would be brilliant to see you on that as well. As I said, keep a wee eye out in your inbox. That will be coming up. But I do want you to know if you've got feedback on, my car had a small stone chip and I didn't know where to go to get this sorted, or I booked a windscreen and I didn't see it for 3 weeks, or I put my car in for repair and I didn't get any updates. We know that those things have happened in the past. We also know that we've not been the best at showing you how to check those things. So what we're going to do is get you with the people so that they can explain exactly how that happens. This isn't going to be along with the next quarter webinar, which I don't know what's going to be yet, but we're going to find out what your teething problems are and then do it. This is going to be a standalone. So please keep your eye out. We'd love to invite you down to come and do that. Cool. Eliott, have you been having a look at some questions?
I have, and I do want to tackle a couple of them with regards to HMRC and tax codes. So first off, this is very much a thing which actually your scheme leads, people who are in charge of this, will be able to fix and sort out. So I can tackle almost two of the questions in one. I'm going to try and tackle two of the questions in one. So with regards to the tax code and the changing this and on the reporting of this, included on the reporting of this to HMRC the employer, needs the P11D value, which is essentially the value of the road value of the vehicle itself. And this is reported to HMRC. Now, we provide that precise value to HMRC. So that is not something that needs to sort of be looked at. Additionally, obviously, if the tax code is coming up wrong for any of you, what I would very much recommend is, as always, if there's anything very specific, contacting your scheme lead to then get in contact with us in the account management team. We're always available to look into things and make sure that everything's okay. The next part is that if you've had the vehicle for a certain amount of time and HMRC has only actually started reporting very recently that your tax code has changed and that those things are coming into effect. So what happens is that businesses need to report this to HMRC when the vehicle comes once within a quarter. So some businesses do it differently, and it can take a little bit of time for this to then be registered with HMRC and for the tax code to come into effect as soon as possible. Once that comes through, your tax code should be showing correctly. But if there is any problems, as I've said, please do not hesitate to get in contact with us and we'll fix it. That's pretty much what we do. If there's ever a problem, we'll fix it.
Amazing. Thank you, Eliott. I can see I've been dropping backwards and forwards and answering some questions in here. There's a couple of stuff here that we need to just double check on. How will upcoming changes to vehicle excise duty for electric vehicles affect us? We cover all of that, right, Eliott? So there are some things there that we need to cover and make sure that we're all covered off, and we're not we'll probably let you know more about that, which is good, but we can get that sorted for you. That's a really, really good question that we should have more answers on. David, if you wouldn't mind, if you could email me, that would be amazing. And I will then chase that up for you. Not because there will be changes to vehicle exercise duty, and there will excise duty, and they will affect electric vehicles, but how they affect you because you are leasing a car through salary sacrifice is quite important as well. So drop me a wee email and I'll get up to date with that. And then we'll probably put that in one of our driver newsletters, which you may or may not have heard you may or may not have heard about this webinar in. We're trying to do a monthly newsletter where you learn a little bit more. So actually, that's a really good thing. I'm going to pop that in my notes right now, so we can keep you up to date with that, which would be amazing. Eliott, do you want to take some questions on like some stuff around? I see some stuff in here around. I've had my car for 4 months with salary sacrifice, but HMSC only advised last month they were notified was on salary sacrifice. There's some other stuff about retention, and I think somebody was asking about leaving the business and some other stuff as well. Do you want to have a jump in on that?
Yeah, so the one with the HMRC, because that one is done, as I mentioned, by quarterly. So it sometimes takes a little bit of time for HMRC to catch up, but they will always make sure that everything is correct with regarding to the tax that you pay. Not sure if I mentioned that one previously, but like it was obviously with the Payslip, obviously the quotes that we give you and how they can sometimes fluctuate. HMRC will always make sure that everything is correct with regards to how much tax you pay. And if there is ever a disproportionate aspect, then obviously I was looking for a claim on that one. If you think that there's something different, obviously speak with HMRC. That's probably the best way to go about it if things aren't looking correct for you. There's another one that I've spotted, which is what if you want to keep the vehicle when you leave the company. So one of the aspects that you can do there is that you can look at trying to purchase the vehicle from us with the residual value left of the vehicle, and we can do our best to support you on that one. Additionally, one of the more exciting options that we do offer and what we try and do to best support, if you are leaving your business and you are looking to go to another business sort of directly at a different point, what you can do is that you can look and firstly see if the business itself, it actually does salary sacrifice. If it already does it, then what we can do is actually look at novating the vehicle directly with the exact same details that you've already got in the exact same contract over to this particular business. And that can be really, really useful and really beneficial. Now, one of the other things that we've seen some people do is that actually have said that they've, gone over, and ideally the salary sacrifice scheme has been really good for you. You've had great experiences and you want to continue that over to wherever you go next. Having those conversations with businesses and seeing if they're looking at actually wanting to start up with us. We're always happy to help with new businesses who want to obviously bring in and obviously join the scheme. For lack of a better way of putting it, the more the merrier is essentially what we're looking for here. And that's certainly something that we can help with. Just going to keep looking and see if there's any further questions that I can help with.
Eliott, I saw a couple. I'm able to drop in and out now because I've stopped presenting. So please don't feel like you have to keep doing that as well. Thank you. I can see in here, there's some stuff around. Cliff asked about the option to buy the car at the end of the lease. If you upgrade, one big thing here that there's a couple. What if I want to continue the lease when I leave the company? You've already covered that before my term is up. It depends on where you go and who you go with. Another one we get a lot of the time is what happens if I leave the business and want to hand the car back. That can depend on a whole load of reasoning and what's going on. Some companies build in a whole load of protection to make sure that's the case. I did see one big question about maternity cover, and I think it might not come up a lot, but that's something that was really close to Fiona's heart when she set up Octopus Electric Vehicles and also really pushed on. Sorry, I keep looking over at Eliott to make eye contact with him, realizing that he should be here.
I'm not sure where to look at some points.
But Fiona is our CEO. She was a young mum, or a mum with young children when she started this business. And a big thing for her was to not punish people and have them drop off if they had children. So on that, Eliott, do you want to cover a little bit about what happens with maybe long-term sick, maternity, and some other things as well?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So what I think is also a thing that's important for us to say is that with this entire experience with salary sacrifice, we do everything that we possibly can to make sure that it's a very enjoyable and pleasant experience, and that we can support you no matter what happens, because we understand that certain situations will crop up over time during the time you've got this lease, which can make things a little bit more tricky. And so we have coverage that can help that. So what we have in place is something that is called a early termination waiver. Now, with this early termination waiver, it's there to make sure that not only obviously yourself is protected, but obviously the business that you're a part of is also protected. But the most important thing, I'd argue, in a lot of these cases, especially for on this webinar, is that you feel that you have some level of protection. So first off, this kicks in once you've had the vehicle that's been on the road for 6 months. Once that has happened, we are then able to look through the options and obviously talk through a little bit what we can do to support. So the first one, which I will be honest, is quite possibly, I think, my favorite one of all of them. I know that sounds very odd, but it will make a little bit more sense in a second, is what we can do for maternity cover. Now, with this, there are going to be a lot of factors that change, but essentially, if your salary is going to fall below or sort of, to statutory pay, or it looks like it could potentially take you below national minimum wage with having your vehicle while on maternity leave, what we can do and what we have done is that we will not be charging you for up to 12 months of the entirety of the lease. We do this because we want to make sure that this entire experience is manageable and something that you can continue doing. You can continue to have that car for up to 12 months without having your salary being deducted. Now, I know that may sound a little bit far-fetched, and I'll be really honest, when I first saw that, I thought that can't be right, but it is very much correct. And obviously, some people may ask, how does this affect your business? The business and us are the ones who deal with that, and we make sure that that's not something for you to worry about by any means. Now, something very, very similar as well for things like extended sick leave, just for a shorter period of time, we're able to do that and make sure that you do not have to have those deductions, and we remove that worry for you, and you haven't got to think about it.
Amazing. Thank you, Eliott. I just wanted to make sure everybody was fully aware of that, just in case. We're going to round off in a couple of seconds because we're a bit out of time. Thank you for all the questions. It's really good. But it's fantastic. 2 more questions, I think. Richard is asking, I think it's a really good question. What happens if the car is written off in an accident, and how does that work? Hopefully Eliott's got some answers for that, because he works with the businesses that would have to deal with some of that paperwork. And then also, Wai Zhang, if I've pronounced that wrong, please forgive me. How do we value almost new cars for or are nearly new for tax code and benefit in kind? I might need to go away and get you that answer and bring it back. I'm not a leasing expert, but if Eliott knows the answer, we'll get it. And if Eliott doesn't, we'll get back to you on that.
We're possibly going to have to get back to you on that one. I'd like to double confirm on it.
Amazing. But on the written off one, Eliott, do you know the answer on that?
Yeah, so we can help definitely on that one. So firstly, if the vehicle is written off, and obviously the insurers have gone that the vehicle is written off, what we can do to make sure, and I think our main priority is obviously making sure that firstly, obviously everyone's okay and there's no form of obviously damages for yourself in any regard. Additionally, the next sort of phase is to make sure that we can keep you mobile. Now, we want to make sure that you are going everywhere that you need to for the time that we try and get you a replacement vehicle and to continue sort of the lease that you've got there. Now, we'll do everything that we can to make this go as speedily as possible. And what we will do is make sure that you're mobile. We'll get you either a hire car, or if you need to do trains, or if you need to do taxis, we will do our best to support on that one and make sure that, as I've said, I keep feeling like I'm using the word mobile a lot, but yeah, that's our main priority, is to make sure that you are not stranded and make sure that you can't just feel, well, you don't feel like that we're leaving you hanging out to dry, because that's not what we want to do. And we'll make sure that all the businesses, and we'll coordinate everything. But as Charlie did mention, the number one thing to do in this situation is for you to call the driver line and obviously make sure that you sort of speak to our team. Now, we additionally, if you do not know specifically who you need to speak to within the driver line, you can also contact our customer operations team via email. They also, I do believe, have a phone number, which we can try and also find as well, which directly goes through to the customer operations team. Now, a little bit that you may not actually know, which I think is also worth pointing out, is that each and every single one of you who has a vehicle with us has a designated customer operations team. They are people who are directly going to be involved if there's anything that you need to talk about regarding the vehicle and its in-life journey, and will be there on hand to make sure that if there's any queries or anything that you need to do, they'll talk you through the process and make you feel as comfortable as possible.
Amazing. You caught me trying to type the customer operations team number into YouTube.
I can keep talking if needs be, if you need a little bit more time, Charlie.
I think we're good. I'd like to thank everybody for coming and for all your questions in the run up to this as well. My email address is in the chat panel, as is the driver line number and the customer operations number. There's also a link to the other Electroverse webinar as well. Oh, that was the other one, wasn't it? I've got it from Amelia here, and that was the type form for mileage to be added. Let me get that for us, which is here. Cool. So I can add that just into the chat panel now, and then we're all good. And I'm going to add that in here, which we're all good. Amazing. Everybody, thank you ever so much for joining. As I said, drop me a little email if you've got any questions. Thank you so much to Eliott for being here. And also, as we said, if you're struggling with any of the things in the Payslip world, speak to your scheme lead. They might not be called your scheme lead at your work, might be your HR representative, might be some management somewhere. We can also try and help you find that person, right, Eliott, if you need to?
Yeah, definitely can. What I would recommend is calling through to the customer operations manager, your customer operations manager, and they can get in contact with us, and we can make sure that we get the email over to you or the person's name, and make sure that you can get in contact with who that person is.
Amazing. Eliott, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody. We'll see your questions in the chat panel. I'll go through the next couple of days, double check them. But if not, drop me an email and keep your wee eye out for that driver newsletter. Thank you ever so much.